The stars disappeared one by one. Something was blocking them, something massive. Park stood on the rooftop of the Seoul Defense Command building and watched the sky turn dark. He was 62 years old. He had fought in 3 wars. He had buried friends and enemies, but he had never seen anything like this. 300 ships emerged from the darkness. They were bigger than mountains. Their hulls were black and covered with strange symbols that glowed red. They moved slowly, like predators that knew their prey could not escape. The world changed in that moment. Every screen on Earth showed the same image. Every radio played the same message. A face appeared not human. It had scales like a snake, eyes like burning coal, and teeth that were too long, too sharp. "I am Fleet Commander of the Dominion," the creature said. Its voice was deep and cold. "Your planet now belongs to us. You have 2 choices: surrender and serve, or resist and die. There is no third option." Park did not move, he just watched. The phone in his pocket buzzed. He answered it without looking away from the sky. "General Park," said a nervous voice. "The United Defense Council is gathering. They need you in the war room, now." Park took one last look at the alien ships. Then he turned and walked inside. The war room was chaos. Generals from 12 countries were shouting at each other through video screens. Politicians were demanding answers that no one had. Scientists were trying to explain things that could not be explained. Park sat down in his chair and said nothing. He just listened. "Their ships are made of materials we cannot identify," said a scientist from Germany. "Our missiles hit them. They did nothing, not even a scratch." "We need to negotiate," said a politician from France. "Perhaps they will accept." "Accept what?" shouted a general from America. "They want slaves, they said it clearly. Surrender and serve." The arguing continued. Park closed his eyes and thought about his daughter. She lived in with her husband and 2 children. He wondered if they were scared. He wondered if they were safe. A young woman appeared at his side, Colonel Lee. She was 38 years old, brilliant and fearless. She had been his second in command for 3 years. "Sir," she said quietly, "the Council has voted. You are now Supreme Commander of Earth's forces." Park opened his eyes. Did anyone else want the job? "No, sir, everyone is too afraid." Park almost smiled, almost. "Then I suppose I have work to do." The first attack came 6 hours later. Scout ships descended from the main fleet. They were small compared to the massive warships above, only the size of football stadiums. They moved fast and silent. Military bases around the world opened fire. Missiles launched. Cannons roared. Fighter jets screamed through the sky. It meant nothing. The ships had shields, invisible walls of energy that stopped everything. Missiles exploded against them like fireworks. Bullets bounced away like raindrops, and then the aliens fired back. Their weapons were plasma cannons, balls of burning light that moved faster than sound. One shot could destroy a tank. 10 shots could level a building. 100 shots could erase a city block. In 4 hours, Earth lost 60% of its military bases. 20,000 soldiers died. 12 aircraft carriers sank. The greatest armies in human history were reduced to burning wreckage. Park watched the reports come in. Each one was worse than the last. London base destroyed. Tokyo fleet sunk. New York defenses broken. Colonel Lee stood beside him. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Sir, we cannot win this fight, not like this." "I know," Park said. "Then what do we do?" Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his desk and pulled out a file. It was old and worn. The words on the cover said, "Project Winter Classified." 5 years ago, Park said, a physicist named came to me with an idea. She said she could change the weather, not just in one place, everywhere, all at once. She said she could bring winter to the whole world in less than 2 minutes. Lee stared at him. "That is impossible." "The government agreed with you. They called her dangerous. They took away her job and her reputation. They buried her research. Park opened the file. But I kept a copy, and I kept track of where she went. Where is she now? Living in a small village in the mountains, teaching children about stars. Park picked up his phone. I think it is time to offer her a new job. On the screens behind them appeared again. He was laughing, his terrible face filled with joy. Humans, he said, I have conquered 17 species. Some had weapons that could crack planets. Some had ships that could travel through time. All of them fell before the Dominion. And you are the weakest yet. Your weapons are toys. Your soldiers are children. This will not be a war. This will be a harvest. Park turned off the screen. Let him laugh, he said quietly. Let him think we are weak. Let him believe he has already won. He dialed a number on his phone. It rang 3 times before a woman answered. Hello. Doctor, this is General Park. I do not know if you remember me. There was silence on the other end. Then, I remember you. You were the only one who believed me. I still believe you, Park said. And now I need you. The whole world needs you. Another long silence. Park could hear wind blowing through the phone. He could hear birds singing somewhere far away. When do I start? Asked. Park looked at the file in his hands, at the plans for a weapon that could change everything. Now, he said, you start right now. The ground forces landed on the 7th day. Drop ships fell from the sky like metal rain. Each one carried 100 soldiers. Each soldier stood 8 feet tall and wore armor made of living metal that moved with their bodies. They carried plasma rifles that could burn through concrete. They had been trained since birth to kill. They expected a fight. They had prepared for resistance. They had brought enough weapons to destroy every human city twice. What they found was nothing. The cities were empty. The military bases were abandoned. The humans had simply disappeared. Commander led the first ground unit into Seoul. He walked through streets that should have been filled with defenders. He passed buildings that should have been fortified positions. He found nothing but silence and wind. Where are they? One of his soldiers asked. Did not know, and that worried him. He reported to Fleet Commander. The humans have fled. The capital is empty. We found no resistance. Laughed through the communication screen. They are cowards. I told you this would be easy. Plant our flag in their government building. Mark this world as ours. Sir, I am concerned. This feels wrong. Why would they abandon their cities without a fight? His eyes narrowed. Are you questioning me, Commander? Lowered his head. No, Fleet Commander. I am simply reporting what I see. What you see is fear. The humans know they cannot win. They have accepted their fate. Now do your job and secure the planet. The communication ended. Looked around at the empty streets. He could not shake the feeling that something was watching him. Deep beneath the mountains, the real war was just beginning. Doctor worked in a cave that had been converted into a laboratory. Computers lined the walls. Strange machines hummed with power. Screens showed satellite images of the whole planet. She had not slept in 4 days. Her hair was messy and her clothes were wrinkled, but her eyes were bright with purpose. Captain Han stood beside her holding a tablet filled with data. He was young, only 31, but he had already lost everything to the aliens. His entire unit had died in the first attack. His had been destroyed. He had nothing left except this mission. The last satellite is almost ready, he said. We can launch it tomorrow night. Nodded but did not look up from her work. Good. What about the ground emitters? Colonel Lee's teams have planted 3,000 of them. They look like communication towers. They have walked past them without a second glance. And the atmospheric processors, hidden in 17 locations around the world, all connected, all waiting. Finally stopped working. She turned to face Han. Do you understand what we are building, Captain? A weapon. Not just a weapon. We are building winter itself. When I press the activation switch, the global temperature will drop 40 degrees in 90 seconds. Every continent, every ocean, every inch of this planet will be covered in snow and ice. Han tried to imagine it. He could not. Will it hurt, though? Their technology is designed for moderate temperatures. Their shields work by creating heat barriers. Their weapons need warm conditions to function properly. When the cold comes, their systems will fail. Their armor will crack. Their shields will flicker. She paused. But that is only half of the plan. What is the other half? Smiled. It was a cold smile, a dangerous smile. The snow itself is the weapon. Each snowflake will carry a microscopic frequency emitter, trillions of them falling everywhere at once. The frequency will match the weakness in shields. When they try to raise their defenses, the snow will tear them apart from the inside. Han stared at her. You have been planning this for 5 years. I have been planning this for my entire life. I just did not know it until now. Above ground, the occupation continued. Colonel Lee moved through the underground tunnels like a ghost. She had spent the last 2 weeks evacuating civilians, millions of them, into bunkers that were supposed to be abandoned. Old military shelters, forgotten subway stations, caves that had been sealed for decades. A young lieutenant named Bay walked beside her. He was 25 and eager to fight. The waiting was killing him. "Colonel, when will we attack?" he asked. "We cannot hide forever." Lee stopped walking. She turned to face him. "Tell me, Lieutenant, what happens when a small animal meets a large predator?" "The small animal dies." "Sometimes, but sometimes the small animal is smarter. It hides, it waits, it watches. And when the predator gets tired, when the predator gets careless, the small animal strikes." She pointed upward toward the surface where the patrolled. "Right now they think we are running, they think we are scared, they think we have given up." "Have we?" "No, we are preparing. Every day we hide is another day Doctor works on her weapon. Every city we abandon is another city we do not have to defend when the real battle begins." Bay thought about this. "So we are sacrificing our pride to gain time." "We are sacrificing nothing. Pride is for peacetime. This is war." Lee started walking again. "When General Park gives the signal, you will have all the fighting you can handle. Until then, you wait, you prepare, you trust the plan." On the flagship held a celebration. He had invited representatives from other conquered species, slaves now, to watch humans serve drinks and clean floors. He wanted them to see what happened to those who resisted the Dominion. "Look at them," said, pointing at a human servant who was carrying a tray. "So small, so weak. They did not even try to fight. At least the others gave us a battle before they fell." The slaves said nothing. They had learned long ago that speaking to was dangerous. Commander stood in the corner watching everything. He had not joined the celebration. Something still bothered him. The humans had retreated too quickly, too completely. It was not the behavior of a defeated enemy. It was the behavior of someone with a plan. But what plan? What could these primitive creatures possibly do against the greatest military force in the galaxy? Looked out the window at the blue and green planet below. Snow was starting to fall in some regions. Natural weather patterns according to the sensors. He did not know that in less than 2 weeks, that snow would cover the whole world. And the Dominion would finally understand the terrible mistake they had made. 3 weeks into the occupation, strange things began to happen. A patrol in Moscow reported that their communication devices stopped working for exactly 17 seconds. When they came back online, every screen showed the same image, a snowflake. A supply convoy in Brazil found their vehicles frozen in place. The engines were fine, the fuel was full, but the machines simply would not move. When engineers examined them later, they found ice crystals in places where ice should not exist. A guard station in Cairo heard singing at night, human voices coming from everywhere and nowhere. The songs were in languages the translation devices could not identify. By morning, 3 soldiers had requested transfers to other postings. Commander collected these reports and brought them to. "The humans are doing something," he said. "I do not know what, but something is wrong." Looked at the reports with bored eyes. "Equipment failures, ghost stories. This is what you bring me. Perhaps you have been on this planet too long, Commander. Perhaps the fear of these insects is infecting your mind." "Fleet Commander, I have served you for 30 years. I have conquered 11 worlds at your side. I know when an enemy is planning something." Stood up, he was nearly 10 feet tall, his shadow covered completely. "The humans are broken," said slowly. "They hide in holes like animals. They have no weapons that can hurt us. They have no ships that can challenge us. They are nothing." He leaned closer. "If I hear one more word about human tricks or human plans, I will have you executed for cowardice. Do you understand?" Lowered his head. "Yes, Fleet Commander." He walked out of the room and never spoke of his concerns again. 2 days later, a patrol found him dead in an alley in London. The official report said he fell and hit his head. The soldiers who found him said his face was frozen in an expression of terror. But there was no one to listen to soldiers anymore. Deep underground, Major Shin led her team through the darkness. She was 40 years old. She had spent 20 years in special forces. She had killed enemies on 4 continents, but she had never done anything like this. Her mission was simple: capture an officer alive. Her team moved through abandoned subway tunnels beneath Paris. They had set up a command post in the city above. Every night, officers traveled between buildings without guards. They had grown careless. They believed the humans were too afraid to attack. Shin counted on that arrogance. "Target approaching," whispered Sergeant O through her earpiece. He was positioned at the tunnel exit, watching the street above. 1 officer, no guards, moving toward the north building. "Wait for my signal," said. She crept forward, her team following in perfect silence. They had trained for this moment for 2 weeks. They knew every step, every movement, every breath. The officer walked past the tunnel entrance. He was talking into a communication device, complaining about the cold weather. He did not notice the shadows moving beneath him. "Now," said. 4 soldiers emerged from the darkness. They moved faster than any expected humans to move. Before the officer could react, they had injected him with a sedative designed specifically for his species. Before he could scream, they had covered his mouth. Before he could fight, he was unconscious. The whole capture took 11 seconds. "Target secured," reported, returning to base. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. O conducted it personally. His family had died during the first attack, his wife, his daughter, his parents, all gone in a flash of plasma fire. He had nothing left but revenge. But he was not cruel, he was patient. He asked questions calmly. He explained that cooperation would make everything easier. He promised nothing and threatened nothing. The officer broke at hour 4. "Your shields," the officer said, his voice shaking. "They are not perfect. There is a frequency, a specific electromagnetic frequency that can disrupt them, but only under certain conditions." "What conditions?" O asked. "Temperature. The shields generate heat. If the external temperature drops too quickly, if there is a sudden change, the frequency can penetrate. The shields become unstable. They fail." O recorded everything. When the interrogation was finished, he sent the data directly to Dr. She received it at 3 in the morning. She read it once, then she read it again, then she started laughing. Captain Han found her still laughing 10 minutes later. "What happened?" he asked, worried. Handed him the report. The winter protocol was designed to disable their equipment, to freeze their weapons, to slow their movements. But this, she pointed at the frequency data, this means we can do more. We can destroy their shields completely, every single one of them. "How?" The snow. I told you the snowflakes carry frequency emitters. I designed them to disrupt communication. But with this information, I can reprogram them. When the temperature drops, when the shields become vulnerable, every snowflake will become a tiny weapon. Trillions of weapons falling from the sky. Han felt something he had not felt in weeks: hope. Will it work? It will work. Was already back at her computer typing rapidly. Tell General Park, tell him we are ready. The message reached Park at sunset. He was sitting in the command center, watching reports from around the world. They were growing more comfortable. They were bringing their families down from the ships. They were building permanent structures. They were acting like the war was over. Colonel Lee entered with the message. She read it aloud. Winter protocol ready, awaiting final authorization. Park was quiet for a long moment. He thought about everything that had led to this point. The deaths, the destruction, the surrender that was not really a surrender. Send the coded message to all resistance cells, he said finally. Tell them to prepare for snow. Lee hesitated. Sir, once we do this, there is no going back, if it fails. It will not fail. Park stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the sky was gray. The air was getting colder. We have spent 3 weeks letting them laugh at us. We have spent 3 weeks watching them destroy our world. Now it is our turn. He turned back to face her. When the sky turns white, he said, we attack. High above the earth, in the cold darkness of space, Lieutenant guided her small ship through a field of debris. She was 29 years old. She had been a pilot for 7 years. She had never expected to be part of a mission like this. Her cargo was a single satellite, the last piece of the winter protocol. If she could place it in the correct orbit, the weapon would be complete. If she failed, everything would fall apart. The debris field was thick with destroyed ships. Human vessels that had tried to fight the fleet flew between them carefully, using their remains as cover. A patrol passed nearby. She held her breath. Her ship systems were shut down. She was invisible, she hoped. The patrol moved on, allowed herself to exhale. She reached the deployment point an hour later. The satellite released without problems. It floated into position among the other hidden weapons, waiting for the signal that would change everything. Turned her ship toward Earth. She had done her part. Now it was time for General Park to do his. As she flew home, she noticed something strange. Clouds were forming over the planet. Thick, white clouds that seemed to spread faster than natural weather should allow. She did not know that Doctor had already begun the first phase of the protocol. She did not know that in less than 48 hours, those clouds would cover the whole world. The gathering storm was almost ready to break. Day 31 of the occupation began like any other. Soldiers woke up in their temporary barracks complaining about the strange human weather. The sky had been gray for days. The air was cold, colder than it should be for this time of year. But the sensors said everything was normal, so no one worried. On the flagship orbiting above, Fleet Commander prepared for a celebration. He had invited representatives from 6 conquered species to witness his triumph. Slaves in fine clothes, brought to watch other slaves serve drinks and clean floors. Today, announced to his guests, we officially mark Earth as the 18th world of the Dominion. A small prize, perhaps, but a prize nonetheless. The guests smiled and nodded. They had no choice. Those who did not smile tended to disappear. Far below, beneath kilometers of rock and steel, General Park entered the command center. The room was quiet. Every screen showed the same thing, a map of the world covered in thousands of small dots. Each dot was a resistance position. Each dot was waiting for his order. Doctor sat at the main console. Her fingers rested on a keyboard, ready to type the activation code. She had not slept in 3 days. She had checked every system 100 times. Everything was ready. Colonel Lee stood at the communication station. She would send the attack signal to every human soldier on the planet. Millions of people, hidden in bunkers and tunnels and caves, waiting to fight. Captain Hand monitored the satellite network. All 47 satellites were in position. The ground emitters were online. The atmospheric processors were powered and ready. "Status report," Park said. "All systems green," replied. "The winter protocol can be activated at any time." "Resistance forces are standing by," Lee added. "They are ready to move on your command." Park nodded slowly. He walked to the center of the room, where a small table held a single object, a red button under a glass cover. The activation switch. He had thought about this moment for weeks. He had imagined pressing that button 1,000 times. Now that it was real, now that it was here, he felt strangely calm. "Doctor," he said, "tell me again what will happen." Did not look up from her console. "When you press that button, 3 things will happen simultaneously. First, the atmospheric processors will release chemical compounds into the upper atmosphere. These compounds will trigger rapid cloud formation and temperature reduction. Within 90 seconds, the global temperature will drop by 40 degrees. And then it will snow, everywhere, over every continent, every island, every ocean. Trillions of snowflakes, each one carrying a microscopic frequency emitter. The emitters are tuned to the exact frequency that disrupts shields. And the third thing." Finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired but fierce. "The third thing is chaos. Their weapons will malfunction. Their armor will crack. Their shields will fail. And then," she gestured toward the screens showing resistance positions, "and then our people will show them what humans can do." Park took a deep breath. He thought about his daughter In. He thought about the soldiers who had died in the first attacks. He thought about the empty cities and the burning ships and the laughter of. "For every person they killed," he said quietly, "for every city they burned, for every child they made afraid." He lifted the glass cover. He pressed the button. For a moment nothing happened. The room was silent. The screens flickered. Then smiled. "It has begun." Was in the middle of his victory speech when the lights flickered. He paused, annoyed. Power failures were not supposed to happen on flagships. The systems were designed to be perfect. "Technical difficulties," he said smoothly, continuing his speech. "Even the finest technology can." The lights flickered again. Then the temperature dropped. Felt it immediately. The air in the room became cold, impossibly cold in seconds. Frost began forming on the walls. His guests started shivering. "What is happening?" he demanded. An officer rushed into the room. "Fleet Commander, something is wrong with the planet. The temperature is dropping everywhere, all at once. Our sensors cannot explain it." Pushed past him and strode to the bridge. What he saw on the main screen stopped him cold. The Earth was turning white. Clouds were spreading across the planet like a living thing, covering continents in minutes. And beneath those clouds, snow was falling. Snow in deserts, snow in jungles, snow in places that had never seen winter. "This is impossible," whispered. On the surface, soldiers were discovering just how possible it was. In Seoul, a patrol unit watched in confusion as snow began falling from a sky that had been clear moments ago. Within minutes, the snow was ankle-deep. Within 10 minutes, it was knee-deep. Their armor began making strange sounds, creaking, groaning, cracking. "Shields up," the unit commander ordered. The soldiers activated their personal shields. The energy barriers flickered to life, glowing blue in the white storm. Then the shields started sparking. The snow was doing something impossible. Each flake that touched a shield seemed to pulse with energy. The shields flickered, they crackled, they failed. The first soldier fell when his armor froze completely, locking him in place. The second fell when his plasma rifle exploded in his hands, unable to handle the cold. The third fell when something moved through the snow, something human, and a blade found the gap in his frozen armor. Major Shin emerged from the white storm, her thermal suit keeping her warm, her knife dripping with alien blood. "Attack," she said into her communicator. "All units attack." And across the world, humanity rose. They came from everywhere, from bunkers and tunnels and caves, from mountains and forests and ruins. Millions of soldiers, equipped with thermal suits and weapons designed for cold weather. They had never faced anything like it. In Tokyo, resistance fighters used explosives to destroy a siege platform that had been terrorizing the city for weeks. The platform's shields were down. Its weapons were frozen. It fell without firing a single shot. In London, Sergeant O led a unit directly into the command center. He killed the officer who had ordered the attack on. He did it slowly. In New York, hidden human ships rose from underwater bunkers and attacked the supply vessels. The alien ships tried to run, but their engines were frozen. They floated helplessly while human missiles tore them apart. Colonel Lee broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice reached every corner of the planet, every human bunker, every position. "This is Earth's Defense Force," she said. "You came to our world expecting slaves. You found soldiers. You mocked our armies. You laughed at our weakness. Now watch us fight." On the flagship, watched his conquest fall apart. Reports flooded in from every continent. Units destroyed. Bases overrun. Officers killed. The snow was everywhere, and in the snow were humans. Humans who should have been broken, should have been afraid, should have been easy prey. "Get us out of here," screamed. "Jump to hyperspace now." "We cannot, Fleet Commander. The cold is affecting our systems. The jump drive is offline." Looked at the screen. The white world below seemed to be laughing at him. 300 ships, the greatest fleet in the galaxy, and they were being defeated by weather. Then the human ships appeared. They came from the dark side of the moon, where they had been hiding for weeks. Small ships compared to the warships, but their weapons worked, and the shields did not. The battle in orbit lasted 2 hours. By the end, half the fleet was destroyed or disabled. The rest scattered, fleeing into hyperspace without their commander's permission. Watched his empire crumble. He had conquered 17 species. He had been called the greatest military mind of his generation. And he had been defeated by snow. In the command center beneath the mountains, General Park watched the battle unfold on screens that showed white chaos and defeat. Lieutenant Bay reported from the surface. "Enemy forces surrendering across multiple continents. Our troops are taking prisoners by the thousands." Park allowed himself a small smile. "It is working," he said softly. "It is actually working." Beside him, Doctor watched her creation change the world. She did not smile. She was too tired to smile. But somewhere deep inside, she felt something she had not felt in 5 years: pride. The winter protocol was working. And humanity was winning. During those 3 days, the greatest military force in the galaxy was destroyed. Not by weapons that could crack planets, not by ships that could travel through time, by ice and cold and the humans who moved through it like ghosts. Major Shin led the assault on Seoul. She and her team had spent weeks studying the positions, memorizing patrol routes, planting explosives in places the aliens never thought to check. Now, with enemy shields down and weapons frozen, she used everything she had learned. The siege platform that had hovered over the city for a month came down first. 3 charges placed at its weak points during the retreat weeks ago. 1 signal from its communicator. The platform fell like a dying giant, crashing into the Han River. "Move to the next target," ordered. Her voice was calm, professional, empty of emotion. She had no room for feelings right now. Feelings came after victory. Her team followed without question. They were shadows in the snow, death in the white storm. In the underground command center, General Park coordinated the global counterattack. Reports came in from every continent. Victory after victory, positions reclaimed, enemies captured, flags raised over liberated cities. But the battle was not over yet. Captain Hand monitored the space battle from his console. "Sir, the fleet is in chaos. Most ships have fled to hyperspace, but the flagship is still in orbit. Its shields are failing, but it is heavily armed." Park studied the tactical display. The flagship was enormous, the size of a small city. Even crippled, it could cause tremendous damage if it decided to attack. "What about our orbital forces?" he asked. "Lieutenant is leading the assault. She is requesting permission to attempt a direct strike on the flagship's engines." Park knew what that meant. A direct strike on a ship that size, even with shields down, was almost certainly a suicide mission. The point defenses alone would tear apart any ship that got close enough. He picked up the communicator. "Lieutenant, this is General Park. Report your situation." His voice crackled through static. "General, I can see the flagship from here. Its shields are flickering. Its weapons systems are operating at maybe 30%, but it is starting to move toward the planet. I think it is going to try to crash into a population center. One final attack." Park felt cold that had nothing to do with the weather. A ship that size, falling from orbit, it would be like a meteor strike. Millions would die. "Can you stop it?" "I can try." There was no fear in her voice, no hesitation. "If I can reach the engine core, one good hit might trigger a chain reaction. The ship would destroy itself before it could complete its descent." "Lieutenant, that mission—" "I know, sir, I know what it means." Was quiet for a moment. "My brother died in the first attack. My parents are in a bunker somewhere, hoping I will come home. But if that ship falls, there will be no home to return to." Park closed his eyes. He had sent soldiers to die before. It never got easier. "Lieutenant, you have authorization to proceed." And he paused, searching for words. "Thank you for everything." "Thank you, sir, for giving us a chance to fight." The communication ended. On the screens, Park watched a small dot move toward a large one. A single ship, flying toward the enemy flagship, flew through a storm of plasma fire. The point defenses were damaged but not destroyed. They filled the space around the flagship with burning light. Ships exploded around her, debris scattered in every direction. But had flown through worse. She had trained for worse. She had survived the mission to plant the final satellite when everyone said it was impossible. She could survive this too. Maybe. Her ship twisted and turned, dodging fire by centimeters. Warning lights flashed across her console. Damage reports screamed for attention. She ignored them all. The flagship's engine section grew larger in her. She could see it now, a massive structure glowing with power, struggling to push the dying ship toward Earth. "For my brother," she whispered, "for my parents, for everyone." She aimed her ship at the center of the engine core and accelerated. The last thing she saw was white light. The flagship exploded in orbit. The blast was visible from the surface. A second sun, blooming in the sky, then fading into thousands of falling stars. The remaining ships scattered, fleeing into hyperspace, abandoning their invasion forever. In the command center, General Park watched the explosion in silence. "She did it," Colonel Lee said softly. "She actually did it." Park did not respond. He just stood there, watching the light fade from the sky. Doctor turned off her console and walked to stand beside him. "We won," she said, "because of her, because of everyone." "Yes," Park finally said, "we won." But victory tasted bitter in his mouth. The snow stopped falling on the fourth day. By then, the occupation was over. 90% of their ground forces had been captured or killed. Their fleet was scattered across the galaxy, their commander dead in the wreckage of his flagship. Earth was free. In the weeks that followed, the cleanup began. Cities were rebuilt. Bodies were buried. Memorials were erected for the fallen, including a statue of Lieutenant in the plaza where she had grown up. The captured soldiers were held in special facilities, waiting for decisions about their fate. Most of them were confused, broken, unable to understand what had happened. They had conquered 17 species. They had been invincible, and they had been defeated by creatures they considered insects. One prisoner, a senior officer who had served directly under, asked to speak with General Park. Park agreed to the meeting. He sat across from the alien in a plain white room, no guards, no weapons. "I need to understand," the officer said. His voice was hollow, defeated. "How did you do it? How did insects defeat the Dominion?" Park considered the question for a long moment. "You studied our weapons," he said finally. "You analyzed our military strength. You counted our ships and soldiers and bases, and you concluded we were weak. You were weak. By every measurement you should have lost." "By your measurements, yes," Park leaned forward. "But you never studied our history. You never looked at what we survived before we reached for the stars. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. World wars that killed millions. Plagues, famines, disasters, ourselves." He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, snow was melting. Green was beginning to show through the white. "You did not understand what winter means to humans," Park continued. "It is not just a season. It is a test. Every year our ancestors faced the cold and the dark and asked themselves, will we survive? And every year they found a way." He turned to face the alien. "We did not transform the battlefield white. We just brought it home. We turned your invasion into our winter, and we survived it like we survive everything." The officer stared at him. "You are saying you won because of weather." "I am saying we won because we have been fighting since before we were human, fighting cold, fighting hunger, fighting each other, fighting everything the universe threw at us." Park smiled slightly. "You thought you were invading a peaceful world of farmers and merchants and scholars. You were invading a world of survivors." The officer had no response. 1 year later, Earth joined the Galactic Council. Not as a conquered species, not as a minor member, as a full partner with equal standing. The Winter Protocol was never shared. Its details remained classified, known only to those who had built it, but its legend spread across 100 worlds. General Park retired to a small house in the mountains, not far from the facility where the weapon had been built. He grew vegetables in a small garden and read books about history. Sometimes former soldiers came to visit him. They would sit together, drink tea, and remember. Doctor accepted a position at the new Interstellar Defense Academy. She taught physics to young officers who would protect humanity among the stars. Her classes were always full. Colonel Lee became Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy. She traveled to distant worlds, forming alliances, building friendships, showing the universe that humans were more than warriors. Major Shin returned to Special Forces. She trained the next generation, teaching them how to move like shadows, how to strike without warning, how to survive anything. Sergeant O visited his family's graves every year on the anniversary of the invasion. He never spoke about what he had done during the war. He did not need to. Lieutenant Bay rose through the ranks to become a general himself. When young officers asked him about the Battle of Earth, he always gave the same answer. "We won because we refused to lose. That is what humans do." And in military academies across 100 worlds, instructors began adding a new lesson to their curriculum. Never mock an enemy until you understand what they survived to reach you. The humans survived everything. That is why they won. That is why they will always win.